Yes, we really appreciate meeting you and getting to see your face in this virtual world.
It is my pleasure. I'm only sorry that I won't be able to come on up to Rapid City.
Yeah, you've been to South Dakota before, I'm guessing.
I have.
Yeah. What are your connections here? Business and professional connections, or do you have family and friends in this area?
No, I've been brought up on several occasions to talk to various associations, companies.
Yeah. So you understand we have the Black Hills National Forest and we have the grasslands and we have agriculture and we have wonderful rivers and streams, including the Missouri River and the Big Sioux River on the eastern side of the state. And you have been doing work in sustainability, if it wasn't even called that 35 years ago. Tell me how you were defining your work when your work first began and how that's changed to how you define it now to help people understand the kind of things that you do.
I was raised in the out of doors by parents who did a little farming, spent a lot of time outside, and came to value the wildlands and people who grow things with their hands, people who make things. Sustainability, the word, entered the English language the year I graduated from college. So
Mm.
yeah, I've been, as I say, I was country before country was cool. Um, what I talk about more is regenerative practices, practices that leave everything better than they were when you started. Sometimes that's tricky to do, but increasingly we're finding that what is good for the earth is also better for people, and it's even better for companies. The companies that are leading, for example, in measuring and managing their carbon footprint have 18% higher return on investment than the laggards in this, 67% higher return on investment than companies that say, we don't care, carbon doesn't matter. The companies that are implementing what is now called ESG, environment, social, and good governance, have been shown to financially outperform the companies that just don't care. The companies that take care of their people have higher worker engagement, and an engaged workforce will deliver to you up to 21% higher productivity and profitability. So these aren't squishy concepts. These are just a better way of doing business. And you can see this particularly in agriculture, where farmers and ranchers who are implementing these more regenerative practices get higher production off of their land, and they're taking carbon out of the air and putting it back into the soil. Increasingly now, farmers and ranchers are even starting to get paid to do that, to sequester carbon in the soil. And ranchers, for example, like Gabe Brown from your neighbor to the north up and around Bismarck, has shown that by switching to these techniques, he can eliminate his use of most of the chemicals. That cuts his cost. He gets higher prices for his products, and he's dramatically increasing the carbon in his soil. He says carbon is the basis of profitability on a farm, on a ranch. What he did, he was going broke. He admits that. He said, I'll try anything. He'd heard that if he went to no-till, he could cut his costs, so he did. Then he heard that if he planted cover crops, particularly deep-rooted cover crops, he could start increasing the nutrients in his soil naturally, taking nitrogen out of the air. So he did that. Now he had cover crops all over his farmland. He had been growing commodity corn, soybeans. He said, I got to get rid of all these cover crops. So he turned his cows out. Cows ate the cover crop. He said, I'm not having to grow hay to feed the cows in the winter. When my neighbors are all out on their tractors throwing hay, I'm sitting in the easy chair. He said, I'd rather sign the back of the check than the front of the check. He has dramatically cut his costs, become quite profitable and increased soil organic matter, the carbon in the soil, from a little under 2% to, in some of his pastures, 15%. Every 1% soil organic matter is 5 to 10 tons of carbon and 20,000 gallons of water holding capacity. So Gabe is rolling climate change backward at a profit.
Mm.
And this is something that farmers and ranchers literally all around the world are now looking at doing. I was on a Zoom call last week with farmers from Africa, talking the week before that with farmers from India. They call it agroecology. I don't care what you call it. It's just better farming and ranching.
Yeah. You're getting at this concept in the example that you just told us in the story that you just shared. But I'm hoping you would say more when we talk about natural capitalism and this idea of natural resources versus services that the environment or the sort of environment services versus products, resources versus services, and how those can be kind of measured in a way that demonstrates to manufacturers, to farmers, to small business owners, to homeowners, how to look at the bottom line and balance sheets in different ways, considering things that we don't necessarily easily consider.
Sure. My company is called Natural Capitalism Solutions. Capitalism is our middle name because I believe in capitalism, but a good capitalist will seek to steward and manage and expand all forms of capital. Capitalism, as currently practiced, I suppose better called cheater capitalism, looks only at manufactured and financial capital, money and stuff, and those are important. But you're leaving out human capital and natural capital. Human capital is more than just your workforce, it's intact community. It's the transmission of values from one generation to the next. And natural capital is not only board feet of timber in a forest or minerals in the ground, it is equally importantly the services that intact ecosystems give to us. So, for example, fertility in the soil, a stable climate. Rapid City had a massive flood a few years back, and we're going to see this sort of extreme weather, unfortunately, more violent and more frequently as the climate changes. There's 4% more moisture in the atmosphere. That's more energy and more water. So when you get these violent storms, more of it's going to fall out of the sky. We're going to have snowmageddon and snowpocalypses more and more. And you're going to have rain bombs and violent wind. A stable climate was part of our natural capital, and we've been destroying it. But again, we know how to get it back. South Dakota is one of the leading states in renewable energy. You get something like 70+% of your energy from renewables now. Hydro on the Missouri, wind, a growing amount of solar. Every dollar you invest in renewable energy gives you 10 times the number of jobs of investing in, say, a coal-fired plant or a gas-fired plant. We can begin to save our climate and increase our economy. Insects, bees, pollinators. Agriculture depends on pollinators, and yet we're losing them around the world. I suppose you could hand pollinate all of agriculture, but it would be a mite tedious. And when you start to add up the services that nature gives us, which at the moment we're not paying for, and so we treat as if they had no value at all, you realize that collectively, these ecosystem services are worth more to our economy than the economy that we count. So when you start doing this sort of whole system accounting for nature's services, you realize that we are going to pay one way or the other. We pay to protect it and to enhance it, or we pay to replace it. And a study a couple of years back by an organization called True Cost, which does analysis for investors, found that if you counted the economic cost of the loss of ecosystem services each year to our economy, no company on earth would be profitable today. Much of what we think of as corporate profit comes because we're using nature as a free dumping ground for our pollution. We're losing things like a stable climate or pollinators or the ability to absorb and detoxify our wastes. So something like the better part of 9 million people die every year of acute air pollution. Most of these are not in the United States. They're in places like Beijing and Mumbai, China and India. But a lot of people die in the United States of air pollution. We've recently found that particulate air pollution is a carrier for COVID-19. So clean air is one of these ecosystem services that we often don't pay attention to. Clean water. South Dakota has some of the loveliest environment in the United States. People come from all over the United States to experience your wild areas, your national parks, your grasslands, your historical sites. These are all part of your economic capital. Tourist officials recognize this and they know they have to take care of it. But a lot of people who do economic equations just assume, well, that's a given. No, it's not. So when you're doing economic development, if you first say, what is our capital? Well, money in the bank. Okay, that's one form. How about lovely people welcoming tourists? That's a form of capital. How about cool little bed and breakfasts that people want to come to? Artists, culture, the Native Americans. You say Rushmore. Sure, okay, that's a piece of your natural capital. If you start to add all of these up and then say, how can we use these forms of capital to enhance our economy? You come up with all kinds of creative ideas, ways of entrepreneuring, new economic opportunities that traditional economic development, which would say, well, let's build a coal plant. Let's attract a factory to come to town. You can do that, but then you, in general, just stealing a factory from somewhere else. And generally, to get the factory to come to town, you've got to give them tax breaks, free water, free land, all sorts of subsidies, which, for a free marketeer like me, it's like, why are you giving this away when you have capital in your own community that you can build a vibrant, local, sustainable economy upon?
Yeah. In your experience of dealing with everyone from climate change deniers to people who want to do the right thing and are trying to figure out how to make the next step, what makes people change their mind? What does, when you speak to people all over the world and you find people who are hesitant or unsure, is it the data? Is it the power of story? Is it their connection to land in a way that they haven't thought of it yet? What do you see that helps people actually change behavior and change their mind?
One of the most effective ways to change the mind of a corporate executive will be his 16-year-old daughter. Young people who say, Dad, your company is dirty. And the executive, and unfortunately most of them are men, say, wow, I never really thought of it that way. Dad, what kind of a world are you leaving to your grandchildren? Now, when people say to me, I don't believe in climate change, I say, okay, fine. Let's assume it's a hoax. Don't go to the casino on the odds of that being true. But if all you are is a profit maximizing capitalist, you'll do exactly what you'd do if you were scared to death of climate change, because I can show you how to solve this problem at a profit. If it's a hoax, we'll make a lot of money. If it's a problem, we'll make a lot of money. Either way, we're on our way to solving the problem. So the science in that sense is bar talk. We can argue about it over a beer later on, but let's get on with solving the problem, because it will give us a more pleasant community to live in and a stronger economy. So if we can agree on what it is that we want, solving the problem is in general pretty easy. Everywhere on Earth now, it is cheaper to use renewable energy than to use fossil energy. And this is why utility after utility after utility is saying, well, we're going to close this coal plant. And they may blame the environmentalists, but the real reason they're doing it is just running a coal plant will cost you 4 to 6 cents a kilowatt hour. New solar comes on at a bit more than 2 cents. New wind comes on a bit below 2 cents. Solar plus wind plus storage, 3 cents a kilowatt hour. Those numbers come from here in Colorado, where Xcel Energy, which was a coal-loving utility, said, we need 1,100 megawatts, y'all bid. And they believed natural gas would win. Gas came in at 4 cents, not counting the running costs, which would be sort of 4 cents a kilowatt hour ever after. Xcel said, no, solar tariffs, bid it again. Everybody bid it again, 58,000 megawatts bid. Wind, solar, storage, 3 cents a kilowatt hour. In a sense, it's over. When the Kentucky Coal Museum put solar on its roof because it's cheaper than hooking to the coal-fired grid at its doorstep, you know it's over.
Leave us with some advice for the everyday South Dakotan who is largely engaging in the world as a consumer. At least that's what the marketers will think of us as and how they will label us. So we're part of the economy because we create work like we're doing right now, but we're also a part of an economy as we figure out what's for dinner. What advice do you have for people who want to do more, understand more, and be part of the solution instead of the problem?
Beef, it's what's for dinner. But how was that beef grown? Do you know the rancher who grew that steer? If you produce your food locally, it's going to be healthier, it's going to be tastier. If your local ranchers are doing grass-fed beef, they're taking carbon out of the air and putting it into the soil. So the more grass beef, grass chicken, pasture-raised pigs you grow, you're solving the climate crisis. Where do the vegetables that you eat come from? Are they commodity grown in California and trucked over the Rocky Mountains in the midst of a snowstorm so that if you have a weather disruption or a COVID pandemic, your grocery shelves empty? Or are they coming from local greenhouses, local smallholder farmers? Because when you buy from a local farmer, she's going to spend that dollar at the local hairdresser, who's going to spend that dollar buying crafts from down the street. The more a dollar turns over in your community, the stronger your economy is. So what can you do? Think about what you're buying and where did it come from? And buy local whenever you can. You'll find out it tastes better, and you'll be supporting your local economy and saving the environment at the same time.
Everybody wins. Hunter Lovins, this has been just a delight. I'm so glad to get to know you a little bit and to continue to learn your work. I see a finer future in your background. The Natural Capitalism book has been a big seller for you. So many books and articles. We'll put links up on our website to all of your website information so our South Dakota listeners and viewers can connect with you as well. Thank you.
Very much look forward to speaking with you all on the 24th.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Adios.